Hello and welcome back to another pure theory crafting from Marvel Avengers Alliance 2. Now, those who see the date that this was posted, take a look up there. We see that the timer has disappeared for Spec Ops 2. Today marks the close of the Civil War in terms of its public access. From here on out, as long as you have the key, as long as you have completed it, it will still be available to you, but the Spec Ops itself is now over. Why do I bring that up first? Because today we're going to go over one of the four characters introduced with it. We're going to take a look at the Civil War variant for Captain America. Here on Pure Theory Crafting, especially for those who haven't watched this before, a big focus of mine is characters with unique mechanics, with unusual abilities, especially those where maybe a little bit of discussion, maybe a little bit of testing, something needs to be done to really see if we can get the most out of what that character brings to the overall roster. And Civil War Captain America needs that. He is in possession of two abilities that are not seen currently on anyone else, although one of them is a mechanic that they could easily adapt to others. But there is one that is absolutely and utterly unique to him. And we'll get into that as we take a look at the character. Let's go over to the hero's screen. Civil War Captain America. I have him at level 30. I have him at 2 stars. I have once again pulled off all his EISOs. Take a look at those stats. Low accuracy. Low speed. Not terribly good on the attack either. He's really not built for pure offense when you look at his stats. Now, why is that important? Especially given that the Captain America variants all tend to be defensively oriented. Both the Tactician, Marvel Now Captain America, and the Bruiser Age of Ultron Captain America. Both of them have protect abilities. Both of them have some form of defense improving features. Age of Ultron Captain America is by far the best true tank of the three. In fact, he's the only one who I would consider a true tank. The Tactician variant for Cap is a support tactician. Can he do it? Yes, in kind of the same way that Moon Knight can tank. In kind of the same way that She-Hulk has a protect. It's there, but it probably shouldn't be the focus of the character. If that's really what you want to use him for, I would shop around. There are better true tanks. For the Civil War Captain America, he's already the Bruiser. He's already got the defensive stats, but he's missing a key element that would define him as a tank. Specifically, he's one of only 2 Bruisers currently in the game who lacks a protection move. He cannot put up the protection buff to focus attacks on himself. Instead, he brings a completely, utterly different and unique mechanic to the party with his tactical, which grants the unique buff Covered. Now, as we get to his tactical, I'm going to go into real depth on that Covered buff, because it has, while it looks fairly straightforward on paper, it's got some truly unique mechanics that you can take advantage of, build a party around, and really make the best out of it when you're designing a team that this variant will be on. So we've looked at his stats. We've seen that he's really built more for defense than for offense. When we get to his EISOs, we'll kind of confirm that. Even his leader's bonus is very defense oriented. 10% evasion and health. Those are not bad. That's not a bad pair of stats. Evasion plus health? That's pretty good all around. But it really plays into that defensive bent that he has. Now his passives. This is one of the more unusual ones. There's only a handful in the game that really kick in when the party gets below 50% health. That plus 20% increased damage for each active ally below 50% health, that includes himself. If all 3 currently active allies, this does not include your back line, if all 3 are below 50%, he gets plus 60% to all damage that he does. This is, if you're going to use him for offense, a very vital part of his overall damage. We've seen how low his base attack is compared to his other stats. he needs something a little extra. His passive is the source of that. Now let's take a quick look at his resources. Just like the Age of Ultron Captain America, he's a stamina and retaliation user. Now stamina I go over often enough. It's one of the most common resources. Starts off at 100, regenerates at 40 per turn. Sometimes that 40 per turn is really vital to balancing the order in which you do abilities. For Cap, for this variant for Cap, the biggest reason that I point that out is because he has a grand total of 2 moves out of his 8 that can be reduced below 40 stamina. Everything else is going to be 50 stamina or higher. This variant of Captain America, even just as a standalone hero, Civil War Captain America compared to the rest of the roster, is extremely reliant on his tactical. And so his move list is kind of designed, resource cost wise, to force you to use it. It defines his playstyle in ways that the tactical just does not for other characters. And so the moves that you equip him with will often force you to use his tactical every 3 to 4 rounds just to keep his stamina up. Now, Retaliation on Age of Ultron Captain America, it works kind of like combo points, except it's defensive. Every time you take damage, every time you are hit, every attack that lands on Captain America, he gets 1 point of retaliation. One of his unique features is that when he is covering an ally, he'll get a point of retaliation when they are attacked by single target attacks. An area of effect attack that hits both will give 1 point for hitting Captain America, but because it's not a single target, it won't give him a point for the covered ally. So, the only time that you're going to get more than 1 point in a single given action is a free attack chain. It does treat free attacks as their own attack, as long as they hit him. This actually means that moves like Rapid Fire, Sweet Christmas, in Spec Ops 2, those Hydra scrappers who chain the slashes with their polearms, that's a quick way to gain 2, even 3 or 4 points of retaliation. Now, retaliation mechanics are different from combo point mechanics, where a combo point mechanic, like we saw in the Nebula video, increases the damage of that move, of the finishing move, based on the number of combo points, or based on the number of combo points consumed. Retaliation moves increase the speed based on the number of retaliation points consumed, and they always consume all of them that you have. So all retaliation moves will start at very slow, but their actual speed is, if you have 3, they're going to be normal. If you have 5, they're going to be very fast. So it's the speed that fluctuates, not the effect. Take advantage of this. If you have 3 retaliation points, then all of your retaliation moves are going to be normal speed, but retaliation moves tend to be very powerful. This allows you to kind of look at the turn order at the top. Oftentimes, as soon as you hit 3 points of retaliation, it is perfectly fine to use the retaliation move. A normal speed attack, especially at their strength, that's just fine. That works. That's definitely acceptable. You'll see that retaliation moves tend to have more damage than his normal speed moves, or a bigger effect as well than his normal speed moves. And if that's the case, then you might as well start using retaliation as soon as you get the 3 points. If you get it to 4 or even 5, by all means, take advantage of that. Get that higher speed in there. Don't go ahead and waste the retaliation points. A very fast move is a very fast move. You're going to get your turn again pretty quickly. But try to use them up at or before they get to 5. Don't let them go to waste. Because they're built up by when the enemy attacks you, you only have so much say in how many of them that you can fill up in a turn. More often than not, if you're letting it get higher, you're going to waste some. So let's take a look at his abilities. We'll really get into the cover mechanic as we get to his tactical, and we'll get into really good tricks on how to use it and who to use it with. When we get to his potential builds towards the end of the video, I will suggest a couple of different teams for him. So, I've got some of his abilities, but not all. Specifically, I have some of the abilities I like to use right now. Starting with his 1-star, Shield Smash. This one is a normal speed move. It's not getting faster. It's melee, it's blunt, so while it benefits from rampaging, it requires crushed and not clobbered. That stamina cost of 60 occurred, I believe, at 2 stars. It doesn't drop below that. This is one of those things where I show off that that stamina regen of 40 versus the cost. You're not going to be able to chain this move indefinitely. Now it applies dazed. Why? Because he's really focused on reducing incoming damage. He really is. Deadly Fortitude. This attack deals increased damage based on the difference in defense between the attacker and the target. Generally speaking, Civil War Cap has pretty solid defense. And that will boost the damage of this move to something truly respectable, even though his attack is lower. This one, out of all of his moves, has the most consistently reliable offensive damage. And even as it goes up, 215 for a normal speed move, perfectly fine, even before you add in the Deadly Fortitude. Now, what makes this move even better is the very next 1-star ability, Safeguard. This is his first Retaliation, and take a look at that cost. Unlike Age of Ultron Captain America, not only does it consume all your Retaliation, it does require 50 stamina beyond that. That said, this is one of the 2 moves where the stamina cost can go down. At 4-star, it won't cost stamina, it just costs your Retaliation. Unyielding and Cleansed. Unyielding is one of those 2. It's the other alongside Covered that is currently unique to Civil War Captain America, at least to my knowledge. I believe by having Unyielding in the game now, we're going to see a similar mechanic in the future for the other core stats. Increases defense by 20% to 70% based on missing health. That is a swing range of 50%. Now, I did another post on the Reddit. I'm going to link that post not just to this video, but also to the companion post over on the Reddit for Pure Theory Crafting, because it matters to Captain America. What I did, how I did it, plenty of testing involved, but the end result is that for every 2% of your health lost, you will see a 1% gain in percentage-based moves like Unyielding or like Desperate Maneuver. He does have a Desperate Maneuver move. We'll see that as we get to the end. Once you drop to 50% health, once your barricading EISO goes off, Unyielding will give you a 45% defense increase. So while it starts weaker than Fortified, it ends up close to 3 times stronger by the time you get down to essentially one health. It takes a little bit to get all the way down there. You probably don't want to sit that low for that long, but you do see it continue to scale up. Pay attention though, it is a medium length duration. It is not as long as Fortified. You will have to throw this on a fairly regular basis. This is especially why that 0 stamina cost gets important. And the speed, of course, increases based on Retaliation. Cleansed is always a good thing to have. You don't really care so much about the short duration because it really doesn't last very long at all. But it does remove all physical buffs off of, or debuffs off of the entire line. This does affect all 3 heroes. I'm going to stress that aspect of it when we get into his builds towards the end. Brave Flip. I know most of this was based off of the Civil War movie. I'm really looking at that and going back to the ship scene at the start of Winter Soldier. But then maybe that's just me. Melee Unarmed, the first of one of several unarmed moves that he does have. This applies Clobbered. Unarmed moves deal more damage and they're faster. Why not? They work pretty well together. Hindered, decrease speed by 20%. He's really based on minimizing incoming damage. That Hindered helps. As we go down, the stamina cost goes down to 50. 50 is far more manageable than 70. I've done the math before in other videos. A 70 stamina move can be used twice in a row and then you're out. A 50 stamina move can be used something like 5 or 6 times in a row, starting at 100. It does need a turn to regenerate, but as soon as you do, you get like 4 more uses of it. So while the damage isn't terribly high, the fact that it does apply clobbered means that you can treat it as if it were a fast move, and you can bring the stamina cost down to something reasonable. That's a 2-star ability. We'll get to that in a sec. Let's get the last 1-star, the one I don't have. Streaming Glory. Ranged Blunt. He's throwing the shield. Fast at 4-star, 50 stamina at 3-star, slowed and weakened. Again, minimizing incoming damage. You would probably take this specifically for the slowed and weakened. I believe he's got some better combinations. That does not make this a bad move. 167 at a fast pace, 60 stamina, drops to 50. This is a totally reasonable offensive move for limiting incoming damage. Again, that's really his focus. That's really his focus. Falling Star. I make heavy use of this. Melee Blunt. It is a normal speed move. At 4-star, it does become fast. That damage is pretty low, even for a fast. But it's the crushed and off-balanced. Now, crushed works against blunt attacks. We've already seen that Captain America, almost any attack he does that uses his shield is blunt. It's hard for me to tell. It's hard to narrow it down. But I really believe, based on the animation and the action and what I've seen of it, that Civil War Captain America's free attack, and we'll see that with his innate, his free attack is melee blunt. Now he throws the shield and he follows it up with a couple of hits. At least one of them is a punch. But because he's reliant on the shield during the animation, and because I believe that animation is actually based off of Falling Star, I know that it's melee. It benefits from rampaging, but I believe his free attack is blunt. This sets it up in 2 different ways: crushed and off-balanced. Increased damage from free attacks and reduce defense having a reduced effectiveness against blunt attacks. Both of those are meant to work with his free attack. We'll see why that's important as we get down to the innate, and especially as we go into the explanation of what covered is for. Taking a look at the other 2-star abilities, Unwavering Strength. Again, Retaliation. Again, 50 stamina on a Retaliation move. That's not going down. What does go down is that 4-turn cooldown. It eventually drops down to 2. This only affects yourself. This is a major heal. It is a powerful heal. And it does apply Confident. His lower damage and accuracy, this kind of brings that back up. Confident is a beautiful buff for anybody, but even more so when you're having trouble hitting in the first place, which is kind of what Captain America has. This should be used to bring your own health back up. It is the only thing you can use it for. There might be some people saying, why would you take it? Again, that explanation of covered, we'll really see where this comes into play. Bursting Combo. This is a very unusual move. Starts at a 4-turn cooldown, starts at 50 stamina. That cooldown is never going down. It's never going to drop, it's going to stay at 4. But the stamina cost does. And it's not a retaliation move. At 4-star, it is 357 damage base. It is a slow speed, it is blunt, so it's staying there. But 357 damage, absolutely no cost, completely free to use. And it gives Tenacity and Strengthened. Now, Strengthened's always good. We love Strengthened. Tenacity is an interesting buff. It's not a tagged buff of any type. It lacks the physical, mental, or tactical tag, which means that it cannot be removed by abilities like Purged. Tenacity kicks in when your character drops to what would be 0 health. It leaves him at 1, and he stays there until after his next turn, then Tenacity wears off. You do not automatically die when it wears off. You're simply sitting there at 1 health waiting to take more damage. This is very big for a couple of reasons. Now, why would you slot this in there? Do you really expect your characters to get to 1 health? I've got a build that'll make use of this. And that will make use actually of both buffs in tandem. And they make use of it because of this. Captain America's 3-star move, Bomb Drop. Retaliation, 50 stamina, never goes lower. Melee, blunt, unarmed, and attack. So this is going to benefit from Crushed for reduced defense and Clobbered for increased damage and speed, especially since it starts at very slow. But it is a retaliatory action. That very slow is not set in stone. Now his damage rating starts at 240, 274. It does go up to 343. This is not bad on its own. It's not great, but it's not bad. But you mix that with Mighty Maneuver and Desperate Attack. Mighty Maneuver is plus 50% damage when they have a physical buff. Desperate Attack is up to plus 50% damage based on missing health. If you have just used that last move and you are sitting at 1 health because of tenacity, this is going to get that full plus 50% damage because Strengthened is a physical buff. That is where Bomb Drop really kicks in. That said, this is also the only offensive retaliation move that he has. So if you choose to bring this along just to burn up some of that excess retaliation on damage, having Strengthened or having his Unyielding buff or anything along those lines that's physical, you're going to see this be a pretty solid amount of damage with its speed based on the retaliatory action. Here's where we start to get into the in-depth explanation of mechanics. Hold the line. Very fast. Puts covered on one other hero. And then does a minor heal, roughly equal to about what Iron Fist Tactical does or any of the other minor heals floating around, on yourself. It does not heal the target of covered. Now, why does Cap have so many self-heals when, as we've looked through his abilities, he has no protection? And it's the covered mechanic. Splits damage from attacks with a covered ally, removes covering from all allies when used on self. You use it on yourself for the heal and to remove the cover from someone else so that you stop splitting damage and can recover Captain America's health. While it is up, it sounds pretty clear on paper. If the enemy's supposed to deal 100 damage, your ally takes 50 and Cap takes 50. In reality, there are some really weird quirks to the mechanic. First and foremost, treat it like blocking. The person you're covering takes half damage. Afterwards, a little purple bit of text that says something like split damage appears over Captain America. Whatever amount of health damage was dealt to the tank, to the covered ally, that amount of damage is applied to Cap's health, but the numbers themselves will not appear. It treats it like a debuff. If Cap is shielded and the covered ally takes 100 damage, Cap will take 100 health damage. The shield will be untouched. He takes it straight to his health. But if the covered ally has a shield, he will take half damage and will then, as long as the shield holds, Cap takes nothing. It only transfers health damage, making shields very powerful with the covered mechanic. Now, I don't really run heroes that use blocking, so I haven't been able to test if this stacks with the blocking mechanic, with the Indomitable ISO set, whether it stacks with Luke Cage's passive. I'd really like to see people kind of play with this and observe the math and do what they can with it. Some people are better at arranging tests than I am. I want to know if this stacks with all of those, because from what I can see, that's how it works. Now, the one thing I would point out is because the damage is a mirror of what the covered ally takes, Captain America's defense is irrelevant for the purpose of the damage split. Now, any attack, especially area of effect attacks, that happen to hit Captain America will do their normal damage and will be mitigated by his defense stat, which is fairly high. But if they hit somebody else, and that person doesn't have the highest defense, if their defense is lower than Cap's, he's going to take a slightly higher amount of damage than if they had simply targeted him. That's okay. Really, the purpose is one of two things with covered. You're going to use it to minimize damage to your tank, or you're going to use it to cut in half the damage taken by a squishier ally. The fact that Cap has both a minor heal and access to a major heal that he can throw on himself, those are what you will use to keep Cap's health up over the course of the fight. Also remember that should he ever drop below 50%, his damage goes up. It's okay to let his health wear itself down. Unlike Age of Ultron Captain America, neither of Civil War Cap's self-heals are healing over time. They're not the recovering buff. They are straight heals that you can use when needed. Dunk Counter. Ability properties: Righteous Fury. Counter single target attacks when targeting which target a covered ally. This acts like Overwatch. It acts like the coordinated EISO, but it is different from those two. Now, there was a big discussion that we had on Reddit where we tried to figure out what the mechanics were of buffs versus innates versus passives and what took priority over what. You can't have the Overwatch buff trigger when you do covered, or anything that activates when an ally is targeted. I do not believe that Dunk Counter will... I don't know that it works with Overwatch. I think that it does. And I think it does because it treats it as two separate things. One activates whenever any ally is targeted. The other activates in response to the covered ally being targeted, specifically aiming at that covered buff. They are two slightly different mechanics. I do know that if you have this and Overwatch and coordinated, you're not going to see coordinated and Overwatch go off together. I do believe that if you have coordinated, you will see this go off with guaranteed and coordinated go off with a 50%. Free attacks seem like they would be a big part of Captain America. They really do. But keep in mind those offensive stats of his. His free attack does not hit terribly hard. You need to bring up his accuracy. And more importantly, you really want that ability that puts both crushed and off balance on the enemy. That's how you'll bring his counterattacks up to an acceptable damage. Because by default, they aren't. This is a great feature and is awesome for throwing out lots of free attacks. But his free attack doesn't apply any debuffs, and otherwise it's just not that good because of his stats. Hopping over here, let's take a look at those stats again. Let's look at them with the EISOs. 4 green health slots, 2 blue defense, 2 white speed. The speed is nice. That's one of his lowest stats, and it does bring his speed up to an acceptable level. He is not terribly bad in terms of speed. And his health gets kind of stupidly high. He breaks 4,000 easily with change, even just a 2-star. That's not a problem for him. His defense is pretty high. It's his highest stat by far. Putting 2 more on there brings it up even higher. But defense is hit or miss with him. If you're not using Shield Slam, which gains damage based on how high his defense is, then defense has something of a limited use. Covered ignores Cap's defense to my knowledge because it mirrors the damage taken by the covered ally exactly. If they take 65, Cap's taking 65, his defense doesn't matter. Which means that, generally speaking, I believe that these 2 slots right here, his 2 blue defense slots, those are really good candidates for the chaotic EISOs. Boost all of his stats. I also believe that when slotting him up here, because his health and because his defense and because his speed are all going to get boosts anyway, aim to have attack and accuracy on pretty much everything you put in there. Ignore evasion, ignore health, ignore defense. Those are going to go up all on their own. Don't stress them. Bring up that low attack and accuracy, or he's just not going to get the job done as far as damage dealing. Now, in terms of set bonuses, he's not a bad candidate for coordinated, but I think there's a better one for him. That 100% guaranteed counter makes him kind of like Moon Knight. in that I believe the belligerent set for plus 50% damage is just as good. If he's countering every time that somebody attacks his covered ally, and in PvE, that's what's going to happen. They're going to attack either going to attack your tank, or they're going to throw an enemy, or they're going to throw an AoE ability and hit everybody. Coordinated is not going to activate when they do an AoE anyway, so you're not losing out there. Instead, it becomes a hit or miss thing. Instead of doing plus 50% on all of those 100% chance of counters, you're going to have the 100% chance of counter at its base damage, plus a 50% chance of doing a second one. And the overall damage comes out to be about the same, except that the belligerent EISO set only uses 4 slots, not 6. Now, his tendency to throw defensive moves and his ability to throw his tactical on a regular basis, the need to throw his tactical on a regular basis, means that bypassing protect and stealth, it's not really a big deal for him in PvE. Now, in PvP, you probably want the ability to bypass protect just because everybody brings out Wasp, and there's no way this character is going to hit Wasp. His accuracy is just not high enough. Not by default. He might eventually graze her down, but he's not going to hit her directly. So maybe take him around protect if you're going to look at him for a PvP build, but I would really, in PvE, you might skip those two and focus on something like the belligerent set to really help him out there. If you're looking at those debuffs, and he does have a list of them, they're all 80%, you'll want the experimental ISO set. And that would take up, 6 right there, belligerent and experimental. Well, we've got another set we could throw in there. Veiled? Nah, not for him. Not that great. Not a big deal. How about a defensive set? He's already taken damage, right? Barricading and Indomitable do not help him in PvE. And I say that because the damage is mirrored exactly. It will ignore both of those mechanics as best that I've seen. I already know that the damage to his health is going to bypass shields. When he drops to 50%, the barricading EISO will go off and give him a shield, and the next time the tank takes health damage, Cap's going to take health damage, and that shield's just going to sit there. The barricading EISO might help him versus area of effect attacks. It will do nothing against a single target attack against his covered ally. Cap's still just going to sit there and take the health damage. It's kind of the same for the Indomitable set. Indomitable halves the damage you take from attacks well above 90% health, but if you're hit with wounded, it still does its damage right past that. And especially that split damage mechanic, I don't believe, even more so than wounded and such, because wounded can be affected by resistance and by susceptible. I don't think either of those work with it. Instead, he just takes the damage. So skip the Indomitable and skip the barricading and give him rejuvenating. Because he's only taking half the damage that your tank is taking, who's already taking less damage because they're a tank, or at least that's the plan, right? Let him recover over time and keep his health rolling. If you do that, is he going to continue to lose life? Is the rejuvenating ISO enough to keep someone at top health all the time? No. No, it's really not. But it shouldn't. What it does do is slow down the pace at which he loses health, so that by the time he gets to that 50% and gains his damage bonus, he's not really in danger of immediately dying. It drags that out. It greatly increases his overall effective health because he's going to consistently take damage and therefore be consistently recovering. Civil War Captain America makes fantastic use of the rejuvenating EISO set when he's covering an ally, especially a tank, in PvE. PvP, your barricading and your impenetrable ISOs, those are going to be great things just because you want to be able to survive past the first turn or two. That's normal. Go ahead and take those. They're great PvP sets for every character. He's no different in that regard. Alright, we've gone over plenty of stuff for him so far. I'm talking pretty fast, but you know what? Let's go into his builds. I've got 3 for you. And the first one that I'm going to do is PvP. Now this one's theoretical. This one is stuff that I don't have, and as he's a 2-star character, and I'm using normally 3 and 4-star characters in PvP, I haven't tried this out yet. But this is an idea I want to throw forward. The first thing that I'm going to talk about, uses tactical. It's very fast. He gets his turn pretty quick. He really does. Does his speed match other people? No, but there's that RNG thing. There's a very good chance that he's going to go in one of the first couple anyway. Throw covered on a squishy ally so that the computer can't just kill them straight off the bat. Use covered to buy them a turn or so and force the damage to be split between the two of them. It's not uncommon that given the chance, in other words, whenever the protect buff is not up, they will choose to attack Cap if he's covering somebody because he'll take full damage and they're only going to take half. So go ahead and use covered, and then immediately on that first turn, because covered is a very fast action, throw bursting combo. If you can get it to 3-star, it's 25 stamina. You're guaranteed to have enough stamina to do it. Especially if you're doing it on the first turn, you're going to have 100 anyway. At 4-star, it's free, but it's also very solid opening damage. But these are the keys. Tenacity means that he's guaranteed to survive until his next turn. No matter what they throw at you, Cap is going to live through it. Strengthened, there's a lot of wasps out there who use Drone Swarm. I'm not guaranteeing that this stays on you, but if it does, that's fantastic. Its slow speed will cause the enemies to gain multiple turns before you get to go again. With Tenacity, you're going to survive that long. You've already dealt a good chunk of damage. This move does not hit. This move is not weak. It does a pretty solid opening shot. But the guaranteed survival while losing health can be followed up with Bomb Drop. Now, the more attacks they've launched against you, the more retaliation you have. And if they've hit you and knocked you down to using Tenacity, or if they've hit your covered ally, you're going to have enough retaliation to use this move. The Mighty Maneuver gains its bonus from Strengthened. Or if you have another party member who can throw buffs, and I suggest you do, any physical buff will trigger this. And the Desperate Attack, especially if you drop all the way down to using Tenacity, will make this a killer move. All the multipliers stacked together, this move is going to hurt somebody badly. And that's how you should use it. Now, depending on the amount of retaliation will depend on whether or not you get another turn and whether or not you even survive to get another turn. But it's a great burst of damage if your team is taking lots of hits in that first round. You have a third slot, and you have some choices in here. I would suggest a filler move that you can either throw first if you think the enemy is pretty evenly matched and you don't want to use your Tenacity in the first turn, or if you survive past using Bomb Drop and you want to follow it up. There are two big uses here. One, everybody takes evasion characters. There's not a whole lot of high defense characters in there. Shield Smash is almost guaranteed to be good solid damage. The other, and perhaps more accurate, the one that I would look at more is Falling Star. Crushed and Off Balanced means that if they hit your covered ally, and that's how it's building your retaliation in that first turn or so, if you don't think that the enemies are going to kill you right off the bat, cover an ally, then use Falling Star, then give yourself Tenacity. This is probably the one that I would choose as your third move in there, especially with the fast speed at 4-star. But that's a potential PvP build that punishes people for damaging Cap or his covered ally by building his retaliation, lowering his health, but surviving it through the use of Bursting Combo, and guaranteeing that Cap survives long enough to throw a Bomb Drop at you for lots of damage. Stack your accuracy. I cannot repeat that nearly often enough. If you're going to use him in PvP, stack your accuracy, because his accuracy is not good enough for the current PvP meta on its own. It can get up there, but you got to focus on it. PvE, I split this into two paths. Both of them are based around the character you choose to use as your tank. This character, like certain others, especially Agent 13, I covered this thought in her video, this character focuses on high-end or challenging content. Because he splits himself halfway between damage and tank, you do not want to bring him in place of a full damage dealer when you're looking at lower or weaker content, or you're doing those, level 30 scouting missions where every enemy is level 27. Bring a full damage dealer, bring somebody with a strong AoE, bring somebody other than Civil War Cap for weaker content. But when you're getting into heroics, when you're trying to do some of those epic bosses, and you really need to make sure that your tank is up to par, that's where Captain America is going to shine. You've got, again, two options. And I have two completely separate builds that I'm going to suggest based on whether your tank is a true tank or whether they're just somebody who has access to protect. Now, if they're a true tank, and I'm going to say this right off the bat, other than Wasp, if they are a defense tank, then I have a set of moves that I would carry with him. Wasp is a weird exception. Her high evasion means that, generally speaking, his tactical is not going to help her much. She's simply not going to be killed 9 out of 10 times. She's just not going to take enough damage for it to be worthwhile to bring Captain America in place of a DPS. But when it is worthwhile, when she does take damage, it's not uncommon for her to simply flat out die. Wasp's defense and her health are abysmal, and if they can get past her evasion, and there are characters who can, Bowman in the Hydra 4 fight, some of the other characters in the current Spec Ops, I have Black Panther nail mine, like, flat out. He dropped her in a heartbeat. Not even a problem. But characters like that who can make really solid attacks even against a high evasion character, he can often save her life. Instead of taking 2 to 2,500 damage and just dying, she would only take 1,000 damage. Is it a lot of her health? Yeah, sure it is. But she didn't die in one hit. So Cap with Wasp is a really weird relationship where 9 out of 10 times he's useless, and that one time he is the only reason she's still standing. It also means that he'll take 1,000 damage in that hit because he takes what she took, and she has miserable defense. Use him with a defense tank, and you're going to see something a little bit different. Defense tanks like Luke Cage, like Groot, especially characters like Groot and Age of Ultron Captain America, these are defense tanks with the ability to self-heal. Pairing him with them, splitting the damage between the two of them, and having the both of them do self-healing clears up your third slot and says you do not have to take a true healer or support if you don't want to. You can carry a DPS with you and just have Cap and your tank kind of self-heal themselves to keep themselves alive, and it's okay if you drop below 50%, because as soon as you do, this version of Cap gets stronger. He does more damage. So when you're pairing with a true tank, especially a true tank with self-healing, I would look at a certain set of abilities. I would look, as always, at Falling Star. In PvE, you're going to be countering constantly. Falling Star is a move that you can use 3 times without running out of stamina to apply Crushed and Off Balanced and increase the damage of those counterattacks, in between all those times where you're using your tactical. Now, if you're running with a true tank, someone who can not only use Protect, but reduce the damage they take while they're doing it, healing abilities, shielding abilities, especially abilities that increase their own defense, I would bypass his party-wide defense increase, and I would use Unwavering Strength as your retaliation move of choice. You can drop the cooldown to 2, and a 2 cooldown is perfectly fine for this move. It allows you to throw covered, it allows you to put off-balanced and crushed on an enemy, and then you come back and heal yourself again. And so as they're dealing damage to your tank, and this version of Cap is taking his damage, your retaliation can be used on command to heal yourself back up in big chunks. This more than doubles your tank's health bar. Even more so if they have the Rejuvenating EISO, if they have Barricading, anything that slows down the damage they take. And remember that weird relation between shields and covering. If they can put up a shield and that shield survives, neither one takes any damage at all. Your third move, you have some leeway. Not a bad one to Shield Smash. It's a great consistent damage dealer. You can put in some more maybe situational stuff. Streaming Glory is great if you need to slow and weaken an enemy, especially big, heavy hitting enemies. You get a lot of leeway in terms of that third ability. Um, Honestly, I would probably look at something like Streaming Glory if you're running a full unarmed team. If you're running with like Iron Fist, or if you've got Luke Cage as your primary tank, Brave Flip is probably not a bad one to take just for the clobbered and hindered. That works pretty well too. But the big thing that I would pair in there is I would try to make sure that you've got Falling Star for Civil War Cap's counters, as well as Unwavering Strength to keep his health up so that he can pair with that tank. The third build is the one that I'm using now and that I really, really enjoy. Because this version of Cap is split between tanking and dealing damage, you can have your core tank be also split between tanking and dealing damage. My strongest character right now, my only true 4-star, is Moon Knight. Moon Knight's not a pure tank. Oh sure, he's got self-healing, he's got self-shielding, he's got lots of hit points, he can throw up protect in two different ways. He's not a true tank because he has no way to truly increase his defenses. When he gets hit, he can get hit pretty hard. So I pair him with Civil War Cap. Once again, you have two people capable of self-healing and in the case of Moon Knight, self-shielding. What Civil War Cap brings with it is Safeguard. Unyielding when applied to Moon Knight. When Moon Knight hits about 50% health, when increased, this plus the protection, the 20% increase from protection, Moon Knight at 50% health has a 65% defense increase. That is not bad. That is tank levels of defense increase. Mix that with Moon Knight's ability to counter and the fact that Civil War Cap can apply it off guard, and these two can stand side by side and deal truly ridiculous amounts of damage while still surviving it. The use of Embracer aspect, especially when paired with Moon Knight's tactical to apply a self-shield, which plays really well with covered, as well as his protection ability that is a debuff and applies intimidate. Those work really well in tandem. Now, if you run the Moonlight special that I've been running on Moon Knight, where you can switch him in and out of the tank form, if you choose to do that, and you can, when you pull Moon Knight into stealth in order to give him time to recover his health, have Cap switch his covered ability over to your third person, who's often going to be a damage dealer and thus squishier, to keep them alive. I have a weird desire, and I've put this on the post that's going to be going up on Reddit alongside this video. I really want to try She-Hulk, Agent 13, and Civil War Cap. Because while She-Hulk is purely offensively oriented, but does have the ability to add protection and the Guardian maneuver, She-Hulk's innate ability causes her to take half damage as soon as she drops to 50% health. Throw that up there with barricading, with Cap's covered and safeguard, and watch what happens when she drops to 50% health, he drops to 50% health right alongside her, he gets the 40% damage increase, she starts taking half damage, and because they both drop to 50%, why not? Let's give Agent 13 40 insight, and let's see if we can't give her another turn to start throwing out those powerful debuffs. I want to see if those three mesh that well together. Do I think that's going to be the end-all, be-all, easy mode teams that you see with characters like Wasp? No. No, Wasp is still going to clear content easier than those three will. But it'll be fun. And that's going to be interesting. I think it'll be a blast to play. Lots of swings in the health. Lots of bursts of damage from different characters. That's something I want to see. That's something I want to try. So Civil War Cap, the way that I have him now, he plays really well with the bruisers who can throw up protect, but are really meant for offense. Hulk, She-Hulk, Moon Knight, characters like that. They all pair so well with Civil War Captain America and those counters of his. So again, let's go ahead and wrap this up. It's a lot of talking. We've gone over his ISOs. We've gone over 3 different potential builds for him. Civil War Cap is a bizarre amalgamation of the other 2 variants of Cap. He is great for debuffing the enemies and for supporting your tank and more or less doubling their effective health by taking the damage himself. But he cannot replace them because he cannot protect. And the enemy and the AI will bypass a protected target because they're taking half damage. They will aim a covered ally because they're taking half damage. They will do their utmost to aim at Cap or at the ally you do not have covered. I'm going to put at the bottom here, in addition to the link to the original post, let's go ahead. I'm going to put the link for the mathematical post where I explained my tricks and traits behind how I think unwavering strength and desperate attack works. Give me your feedback on those as well. Let me know what you think of them. I hope you have fun trying this character out. He is extremely unique, and above and beyond all else, that's what drew me to him. I've had some requests for Falcon as a new character, as a character for Pure Theory crafting. I like that. I need to do another Scrapper. He is coming up on the list, and I don't know if he's going to be the next one, but he's going to be one of them, because he, likewise, has some unusual mechanics that make a lot of people pass over him, but I want to test him myself first. I don't have him at 30. I'll get him up there. I'll test him out, and we'll see if I can put together some insight that I can throw up there. As always, give us your feedback. If you are heavy users of characters like this, let us know. Give us some suggestions. Give me any corrections. I am happy to edit that post and give credit where credit is due. Until next time, until that next character comes out, this is Hoagland. I'm out.